Hey there, it's Melissa Tagg, and I am here today to read you a little snippet of A Seaside Wonder. This is book 2 in my Muir Harbor series. It just released last week. It's been really fun having it finally out there in the world. If you wonder why I'm filming this in my car, it's because I was working in my office today and felt like I didn't probably need to film this in front of all my coworkers. Instead I'm in a park and there's a bunch of cars around me, and I bet people are wondering why I'm talking to my camera, but that's all right. Just to set up this little snippet, this is the hero and heroine, Philip and Indy. They have already met for a variety of reasons. Philip has spent the night at Indy's childhood family farm, and again, for reasons that you will know if you read the book, all of Indy's family thinks that Philip is her fiance. For reasons, again. So Philip wakes up in this farmhouse and all he wants to do is leave before anybody in the family encounters him or asks him any awkward questions. But before he can leave, he needs to find Indy, and he finds her wrapped in a blanket, sleeping in an Adirondack chair on the lawn, and it's very cold out. And so that is where this scene is picking up. I'm just gonna read you a few pages, hopefully to whet your appetite a little bit. All right, here we go. Considering Maggie had almost died last night, died on the same evening Ben had dumped her, it really shouldn't matter one whit that an attractive man had found her sleeping outside looking like whatever she must look like, in oversized pajamas, fuzzy slippers, and hair so tangled it'd probably make a perfectly good bird habitat. Indy bent to pluck her quilt from the ground and wrapped it around her torso, partially because it was a little too close to mortifying being around the man while wearing purple flannel pajamas, but mostly to escape the dancing light in Philip's slate gray eyes. You're laughing at me. I'm not. She cinched the blanket under her arms in front of her. You're grinning, which is almost the same thing. You called my grin handsome last night. So she had. So it was. But that was entirely beside the point. Yes, well, I was distraught last night. Is there a reason you're here? Here as in here? I mean at your house? You wouldn't let me go home. You insisted I come here and get some sleep before. I mean here, standing on the lawn on the coldest morning of this autumn so far, without a coat. And yes, she knew how ridiculous that sounded coming from the woman wearing a blanket, but she'd needed to come out this morning. She'd needed the crisp air and the bright sun to chase away yesterday's lingering shadows. Maggie and Ben and that eerie crying she'd heard in the hospital corridor, the same crying that had come back to her in a dream overnight, just like before. Philip combed his fingers through his hair. I wanted to make sure you hadn't slept out here all night. He glanced over his shoulder toward the house. And, well, I don't know if you remember, but I'm pretty sure everyone back there is still under the impression that oh my goodness. Her blanket fell down one side as she slapped her palm over her mouth. They all think you're Ben. Because yes, in her exhaustion the previous night, she'd somehow thought it was completely reasonable to let their mistaken assumptions go uncorrected. Yeah, he shrugged, which wouldn't be so bad except I'm a terrible actor. I auditioned for a production of Willy Wonka when I was in 5th grade. Wasn't even good enough to land a role as an Oompa Loompa. Thus why I practically ran out of your house a minute ago in an attempt to avoid seeing anyone. Her palms started sweating. Did you see anyone? Philip shook his head. No, but good. She hiked up the quilt, knotted it around her torso, and grabbed a hold of his arm. Then there's still time for you to leave before they start asking questions. Questions? Yes, like when's the wedding and where are we going on the honeymoon and how many kids are we thinking of having? Her blanket tripped her for the second time, but this time she steadied herself against Philip, pulling him toward the house. I've always thought 4 was a nice number. Philip! She pushed her hair out of her face with the hand that wasn't still gripping a fistful of the man's shirt sleeve. You don't understand. My sister's a lawyer. From the moment I told everyone I was engaged, to a man they've never met, no less, she's been waiting to get you on the proverbial stand. I mean Ben. Well, I've got a question of my own. She stopped at the porch steps and dropped his arm. Okay, shoot. If you want me to leave so badly, why are you dragging me back to the house? He was still trying not to laugh, wasn't he? Trying, but completely failing to hide his amusement. She really must look a wreck. I'm glad this is so entertaining for you, and for your information, I was going to get my car keys. I was going to loan you my car so you could get back home and save you from having to make an uncomfortable introduction. Exactly. I don't suppose it's occurred to you to just explain there was a simple misunderstanding. He paused when she didn't answer, too much knowing gliding into his eyes. Oh, you're not ready to tell them about the buffoon. It shouldn't be possible that this same man who'd stammered and blushed and had barely been able to finish a full sentence when he'd stumbled out of that silly wardrobe yesterday could almost eke a smile from her now, just by calling Ben a buffoon. when she was cold and bedraggled and flustered and fine. She was fine, really, because Maggie had pulled through last night, because she was home, in this place she loved, with the people she loved. And as for Ben, she'd get over him. She'd get over the buffoon. She climbed a porch step. Correct. I'm not ready to tell them the engagement's off. But the other problem with telling my siblings you're not Ben is that then I'll have to tell them who you are, which is basically a stranger I got into a car with, who I let sleep on our couch last night. Doesn't entirely speak well of me. And when you're already the flightiest, youngest sibling, she shrugged and climbed another step. Well, I didn't make off with any fancy china or silverware in the middle of the night. That should count for something. Philip's step sounded behind her. And just for the record, flighty isn't at all the first adjective I would have thought of to describe you. Well, she halted on the top step, turning to face him. You don't really know me. I guess that's true. Philip had stopped one stair below, bringing him eye level with her. And that almost looked like regret filling his expression. Regret over what? That he didn't know her? Nonsense. The poor man had likely been asking himself what he'd gotten himself into every hour since he'd first met her. He probably couldn't wait to get out of here. Anyway, once you hit the road, we'll both be spared a slew of awkward questions. Not that I'm trying to throw you out. I'm just trying to end our accidental charade, he finished for her. Right. Oh, she felt like a heel. After all he'd done for her, she was practically tossing him out the door. Do you want some coffee first for the road? It was the least she could offer. She could probably even scrounge up one of Maggie's blueberry muffins. We've got plenty of closets you could hide in while I fill a travel mug for you. He laughed, very funny. No, I'll leave. Go get your keys. I can wait out here. She turned to the door but stopped, angling to face him once more. Philip, everything you did last night, driving me to Muir Harbor, staying at the hospital all that time, why? You didn't even know me. The morning breeze sifted through his hair, plastering his rumpled shirt to his tall frame. He reached up to rub the back of his neck, then shrugged as his arm came back down. I know what it's like not to make it in time. My mom, last spring. He looked away, words he hadn't said settling in and around the ones he had. Oh, Philip, it's okay. It wasn't. She could tell by the way his posture had gone rigid, the way he stuffed both hands in his pockets, the fact that he still hadn't looked back at her. But she could also tell he'd wished back his words the moment he'd uttered them, which meant the polite thing to do now was turn away, reach for the doorknob, let this nice man go home. But the moment her fingers closed around the knob, the door opened without her help. The unexpectedness of it jerking her forward, then sending her faltering backwards. She landed with her back against Philip's chest, one of his arms instantly hooking around her waist, her oomph colliding with his as her blanket dropped to the porch floor. Neil stopped on the threshold, eyebrows raised. Surprise must have rendered Philip as motionless as she was, his hands still splayed on her stomach, the warmth of him doing as much to heat her cheeks as her own embarrassment. Neil, hi. Neil crossed his arms, eyeing Philip's hand placement. She wrenched away. Are you going to the hospital? Can I come with? Neil eyed her pajamas. Dressed like that? That's where I'm going to stop, but I hope it was enough to make you excited about the book. Again, this is a Seaside Wonder, book 2 in the Muir Harbor series, and have a great day.